quick sectional debrief and a speed rating debrief of the Dublin Racing Festival over the weekend. Two brilliant days action at Leopardstown. Andy, I'm sure you enjoyed it immensely. I know you had a particularly successful Saturday, which worked out very well. And we saw some stellar performances on the track.
We certainly did, Sam. Yeah, some rather high, illuminating performances on the clock, as you would expect from Grade 1 horses. Some that slightly disappointed or weren't as good as what I thought they were going to be. Looking at the races visually, that's is always a guide to relying on the time figures, not sometimes on your eyes. They always tell the truth. But yeah, just a great 2 days. I think we've learned more in those 2 days than we have in the whole season in the UK. I think the Irish, based on what we saw over the weekend, they're going to win the Presbyterian Cup. They've just got so much strength in depth, and the fact that Willie Mullins had 9 is a bit of a precursor to what might happen in a month's time.
I think I read somewhere that he's either got favourites or vying for favouritism in 14 races at the Cheltenham Festival in about 5 weeks' time. So that just shows you the strength in depth he has. Doesn't seem to have suffered too much with the loss of the Gigginstown horses and the Jarrow O'Sullivan horses that have disappeared out of the yard in recent times. So, and talking to the main man, Mullins, he obviously started off the weekend in great fashion with Gaillard de Mesnil, the horse that you put up anti-post at sort of 14, 16 to 1 for the Ballymore, into vying for favouritism now on the back of a really promising performance. There were one or two little queries going into the race, that he was stretching out in trip. He was having the hood on for the first time because he can be quite a keen and exuberant type. How do you feel that he answered those questions?
Yeah, I mean, he settled really well, which is the first part of the job, wasn't it, Sam? And then I thought, given the way the race was run, only when you should have done the figures, you couldn't tell at the time, it very much suited the front runner Statler, because they didn't go overly quick. They only had 60 on our speed figures compared to Galliard's performance the time before of 74. So he's had to show a good bit of pace to actually get to Statler and then outstay him on the running. So he's got an extra string to his bow now, hasn't he? We know he can handle a fast run race. The time before was a 74, as I said, and he's got a bit of tactical speed as well. I think the race, without wanting to pour cold water on Brave Man's game, it looks between Bob Ollinger and Gaillard de Mesnil. I can't see too many others forcing ahead above the parapet between now and Cheltenham. I think there's actual school of thought to say you can back Bob Ollinger at 5 to 1 if you've already backed Gaillard de Mesnil and be in a really good position, because I do think those two Irish horses are by far and away the best. But yeah, Gaillard de Mesnil, for me, he's still the pick of the Irish.
And perhaps Statler stretching out in trip for something like the Albert Bartlett?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think with a more conservative ride, that might suit him. I don't think he necessarily had to make all. They obviously tried to make all on Sunday because they were Saturday because they were looking to play to his strengths and go from the front to make it a test. That didn't quite pan out, but either way, it's still a good effort. And Fakir as well, he caught the eye back and forth. He's done
Handicap?
I would say the Albert Barley, because he's been running in graded races, and he's one of those horses that's got the ideal profile for an Albert Barley, i.e. lots of experience. I think he's had about 10 runs now over hurdles, which, looking back through the roll of honour for the Albert Barley, you want more than 4 or 5 runs, particularly one season as well. So I'd suggest he'd be Gordon Elliott's number 1 horse in that race.
Yeah, he's certainly showed plenty of potential, even if we have seen him a good few times. There could be more to come from him for a strongly run 3 mile. The Dublin Chase didn't really throw up a lot of clues, because we always were really aware of the merits of Chacun Passoir, weren't we?
Yeah, nothing much to add really, Sam. We've got Chacun Passoir's best ever time, 81. He ran to a 79. His circuit sectionals were on par with an Ergamine, who took the Novices Chase half an hour later. Interestingly, some correspondents have the Novices Chase slightly quicker, and yet we've hand timed it, and we've got an Ergamine a couple of seconds slower than Chacun Passoir. So trust which one you want to, kind of thing. But either way, I thought an Ergamine to run the final circuit on par with Chacun Passoir, which is basically what he did in the end. Tells you what a good novice he is, and of course he was eased down as well at the end, so he could have run a little bit quicker. So I would say Chacun Passoir and Ergamine, even at this stage of their career, roughly around about the same horse. So that tells you the volumes of Willie Mullins' start young at novice.
Yeah, so taking that on board, you're suggesting then that Shishkin's going to have a little bit on his plate in the Arkle?
looks very much that way, doesn't it, Sam? Energumene along with All Man's Gain are certainly going to make Shiskin keep him honest all the way through that 2 miles around Cheltenham. That might bring the best out in him because he hasn't been tested all the way to the line as he yet. Shiskin, he's rather tuck it up sort of a mile, half a mile out. He's had a solo or a time trial from there on in. So it's we're not suggesting for 1 minute that Shiskin's massively vulnerable all of a sudden. But he's not quite the 4 to 5 or the massive odds-on shot that he looked like being perhaps a couple of weeks ago.
There's a bit of strength in depth there, that's for sure. Obviously, Franco de Port shaped pretty encouragingly. And what would you do with Blackbone now?
Well, he's not quite good enough to take on the absolute very best. I wouldn't have thought they'd want to go handicapping with him. And you never know, really. The fact that he's looking to run 3 or 4 in some of these races because I mean he's got that much ammunition. And if the owners want to go, why not? If not, then they probably could save him for either Fairy House or Punchestown. But I don't think Franco de Port, whichever race he comes over for, has got to be a serious contender. Maybe stepped up in trip if they wanted to take on Envoy Allen. They've got a viable contender there. Because that bad mistake at the third fence, the second one down the hill, was very costly from a win perspective. But he did really well to finish second. I mean,
very strong stare at 2, isn't he?
Massively. You can't underestimate that mistake and how far it knocked him back. He lost 4 or 5 lengths, but he went from sort of being in 3rd or 4th travelling to with only 1 behind him in a very short space of time. In Grade 1 races, you just can't afford that.
No.
But the way he stayed on, he looks a lively outsider for the Arkle.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Might be one of those horses that just gets a little bit overlooked in the market.
Definitely.
For sure. We'll skip the Matheson Handicap chase, although it produced a meritorious performance from Way for the Sea, who was winning at the festival again, and go straight to the Irish Champion Hurdle, where we really did see another marquee performance, much like Energumene, from Honeysuckle, who, she was absolutely stunning, wasn't she? Her performance on the clock and visually was spectacular.
Yeah, all the way around, you always felt as though she was in control, Sam. 1 or 2 others looked uncomfortable from a long way out, including Sharjah. Once again, has proven that 2 runs in quick succession, when he's knocked the ball out the park on the figures the time before, just takes it out of him. I think he's a horse that's best fresh. I think if Connections had that time again, they'd want to probably miss that race out and go straight to Cheltenham. He's still not without a chance, when it comes to the big day, because he's run well there before, as he did last year, Bon Appetit. But it's very much advantage over to Honeysuckle. I'd imagine they'll go for the champion. I can't see any other way now, having won their race. And she looks as though she's got everything. She can win in a slowly run race like she did at the time before. She can run in a strongly run race, and if they really did serve it up, she's got the stamina for 2.5. So, and she goes around Cheltenham. So, yeah, looks the right favourite or close to favourite.
And perhaps most importantly, to ally with her ability, she's also got that temperament and that attitude, hasn't? She wants to do it, doesn't she? Not that Epatante doesn't, but she looks a little bit more fragile. So I'm guessing, time recording, they're 5-2 each of 2. If I gave you a tenner, there's no doubt which one you'd have it on.
At the moment, yeah, Honeysuckle, yeah. Their time figures are now becoming a little bit closer together. We've got Honeysuckle, funny enough, her fastest ever time going into Saturday. Was only a 73, and yet she came out of it with a 76, her best ever number, suggesting she's actually still getting better. And I think we'll see an even stronger performance, perhaps in the Champion Hurdle.
And what about any of the vanquished, Andy? I mean, there was a little bit more encouragement from Abacadabra.
Yeah, massively, Sam. Yeah, I mean, we talked about him before, didn't we? That he's one that's his season is yet to really ignite, albeit he has won at graded level. There was obviously excuses for him at Christmas, and he was much better on Saturday. Obviously, he's got to turn the form around to a massive degree with Honeysuckle, but given better ground, the spring and the fact that Gordon Elliott's horses, I'm sure, will be better form than they are currently. Don't forget, he only had 1 winner at the Dublin Festival, and that was an odds-on favourite that didn't have a great deal to beat. I think you've got to bear that in mind. It's easy to forget, isn't it? You look at a yard's dominance like Willie Mullins, and Elliott's got to come good at sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it's usually at Cheltenham. So if Abacadabra comes in together in that sort of wave of or that groundswell of improvement that we're likely to get with the Elliott team, then he's still a viable each-way proposition around about the 12-1 mark.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't disagree with that. And just give us a line really, and try and put into context what Kilcrew did in the finale.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say only a 59. We usually get good bumpers, anything over 60 or above. The champion bumper will usually be won with around about a 65, slightly better in a vintage year. So his number of 59 in a common canter, he's obviously massively upgradable. I think if he would have been pushed out or asked to extend, he probably would have run somewhere close to 65. And he's certainly up there with Sir Gerard. I mean, he now usurps Sir Gerard, which was unthinkable going into the race on Saturday as the favourite for the champion bumper. The fact that he's trained by Willie Mullins as well has obviously got to be another significant factor. Willie's won it more times than Gordon Elliott. So yeah, again, we've got another fascinating renewal of the champion bumper with Messrs Mullins and Elliott seemingly holding the key.
Yeah, and don't forget Pam Sly as well lurking there. That form took a bit of a boost. I leaned over. So that's boiling up quite nicely. No doubt Willie will win it with a 6-string 25-1 chance. But let's get over to day 2 then. The Spring Juvenile, usually a very informative race when it comes to either the Triumph Hurdle or the Boodles Handicap Hurdle. Won by Quixilios, very, very strongly backed. Gordon Elliott's only winner of the weekend. And if you read the quotes, probably the only horse that they really fancied of the weekend. Stepped up really on what it had done previously on our figures. It did a couple of jogs round at odds on, managed to achieve what he achieved, but really stepped up to the plate, and a number plus in advance of 17 normally marks out a serious Triumph Hurdle contender, doesn't it?
Yeah, we said on a previous podcast that this year's Antipod's favourite for the Triumph had clocked a number in keeping with our Connor, the fastest we've ever awarded for a Juvenile, 74. And we said that we'd never see a Juvenile. We won't see a Juvenile this year getting anywhere near that or better in it. Well, Calixios ran a 73 on our figures on Sunday. So even though he looked workmanlike rather than spectacular, probably due to the fact that they'd gone really hard and he was a little bit tired on the running. That was a performance to suggest he's a serious threat now to his own stable companion Zana here, just based on pure time figures. Which one's the best? I don't know, but at the current prices, put it this way, if you haven't had a bet, I think Calixios at 6-1, you can still get top price in the village. I think that strikes me as being a fair each way bet, given that beyond him there's not a huge amount of opposition. Obviously, Williams will have something to say with French Cecile, won't he? Horse that we didn't see over the weekend, which is a bit of a disappointment. Apparently, goes straight to Cheltenham on the back of just the one run. And that's a difficulty with time figures like we had with Calixios. We didn't get him clocking any big numbers, but that doesn't mean to say that I can't do it in a championship environment. And that's very much for French Cecile. He's only run a 57 so far, but who's to say that he can't join the party if they get a strong run race at Cheltenham? So the Triumph is bubbling up into a decent little race.
And what did you make in second of my namesake? Do you think he's a viable favourite for the Boodles Handicap, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely. Him along with Bustleton. I was rather damning at Bustleton in some quarters. I did a few previews prior to the weekend. I just didn't think he was good enough. Now, he wasn't good enough to win, but certainly think he's good enough to run a race in the Fred Winter. I think he should get an official mark in between the 130, 135 mark.
Do you need 3 runs, though?
He's had 3 runs.
Bustleton, yeah, but do they include the French run?
They do, yeah.
They do, definitely.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, because Paul Nicholls did it, didn't he, with a one a few years back?
You
don't have to have 3 runs
three UK runs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's going to get a mark in between the 130, 135 mark, which should get him nicely mid-table in the Fred Winter. Given that he's going to be one of the few horses in the Fred Winter who's run a championship time figure in Grade 1 company. I think St Sam at 10-1 and Bustleton 16-1. You couldn't go too far on backing those 2 each way now.
Oh, interesting. Those 2 are catching your eye then for that race. And as we say, the Spring Juvenile is often a very good pointer to future winners.
So. Yeah.
The Chanel Farmer Novices Hurdle, where the supreme favourite Appreciate It sort of solidified his position at the top of the market. More workmanlike than explosive, I'd suggest, but I never really liked his position all the way around the track, really. He was just sort of on the rail, but never quite in front, and I didn't think it was a bad performance in the circumstances of where he raced around the track, really.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Sam. I've watched this race several times, and I at first I was a little bit underwhelmed, but then I've gone and seen what happened to Irascible and the other 2 horses that took him on, and they were absolutely punch drunk at the line. But the fact that Appreciate It was able to go hard off the corner, having been taken on and softened up by other horses that wanted to take him on. I think only really good horses can do that. Now, the time figure might not have been off the scale, but it's still good. It was a 71. His best ever is a 74. So he wasn't too far beyond behind his very best, which he did at the previous meeting. All in all, just a thoroughly likeable and professional horse that jumps well, that can go from the front, that can track the speed, and just keeps going. He's the one to beat. I think he's now 7-4 favourite for the Supreme, and he's by far and away the best prospect going in there, as far as I can see.
Strong stayer with gears, isn't he? Pally Adam, you must have been taken with how he travelled through the race.
Yeah, he went through the race much better. I think he's a more light-framed horse, so I think he'd be better suited to slightly better ground. I'm not sure the heavy ground's really ideal for him. And Blue Lord ran a nice race for his connections. He's not one to totally dismiss in a more stronger run environment.
He looks a big, rangy novice chasing type for me. I think he's just a little bit unfurnished at the moment. Blue Lord. I think he just wants a bit of time to fill that frame. He just looked a little bit ill at ease on the track for me. I mind seeing him with another year under him, I think.
Yeah, he was rather ridden to get a placement on anything. I think there was a few of those that were ridden just with a view to not probably taking on the market leader. So yeah, he was probably slightly flattered the fact that he picked up pieces later on when the horses had died. And Irascible, for instance, he paid for trying to chase the favourite. So I wouldn't totally go against him if perhaps Connections now dismiss 2 miles and step him up to 2.5 and giving a more conservative ride. So there's lots of different points to take out of that race. Several that you can mark up and several that you wouldn't write off either.
Sure, and we talk about Honeysuckle being bomb-proof. Monkfish is the chaser that looks bomb-proof at the moment. He looks to have everything in his armoury, doesn't he? Really, he's got all the heavy artillery, jumps well, travels, looks to really enjoy his jumping, and his technique is superb. Copes with any ground, stays very strongly. He just turns away any contender that comes to him. He's an odds-on chance now for the Festival Chase, formerly the RSA, and it's hard to dispute those odds, really, isn't it?
I'd say he's the equine version of Ed Moses. For those of a certain vintage.
It's a niche reference, that is, yeah.
remember, that quality 400-metre hurdler where he just makes hurdling look incredibly easy. Obviously,
metronomic.
Absolutely, Sam. Yeah, he always seems to meet every fence on the perfect stride, which is what Ed Moses did. Never looks like falling. I hope that doesn't get him on the floor at Cheltenham, but he never looks like falling. And his time figure was sensational Sunday. 78, surpassed his previous time, doubled the winning margin over latest exhibition. It probably wasn't his absolute best, but I think that was a byproduct of trying to live with the very best. Monkfish. One firm went 6-4 after the race. That was gobbled up, and now he's odds on. I think if you're looking to invest in a Monkfish, I don't think the worst bet in the world is to take the 8-1 still available for the Gold Cup next season. Because I can't believe that either he or Envoy Allen won't totally brush aside this current division when they go up a gear next season. I mean, with the greatest respect to this year's favourite, Album Photo, he's the only one who has a degree of a reliability around in the likes of Kemboy, Manella Indo, Santini, Native River.
Old guard, aren't they now? You
could not imagine those with an extra year on their back living with Monkfish and Envoy Allen a year down the line. So I could say, if you like your long-term betting, like to lock in an investment, I think going into this year's festival, if you're not prepared to take the odds on, then take the 8-1 before he should win the RSA, and I think next season you'll have a great bit of fun watching that 8-1 shortened by the month.
Just got to all ensure that we're around long enough to pick it up.
True enough. Yeah.
Which in some of our cases is no walkover. Obviously, the Irish Gold Cup only drew a field of 5. It was a small but select field. I know both of us on the podcast were quite enthusiastic about the Storyteller running a big race. And he's a grand horse, isn't he? He's a bit like Dr. Phoenix, a horse that we were lucky to own for a couple of years, that he gets pitched into these good races, picks up some pieces, and then wins the odd race every year just to furnish his connections with a few quid. But obviously, he had to settle for second best behind Kemboy, who was beautifully ridden and delivered again.
Yeah, he's always sort of like an underestimated horse in many respects, Kemboy. But so once again, on his A game, he can run a big time figure. 77, not quite absolute top class, but it's still good enough to beat the likes of Delta Workham. They're in there once again, blotted his copybook. Storyteller was ridden very much like he does to pick up pieces late on. Wouldn't surprise me if Connections went back over hurdles with him and had a dabble with the Stayers hurdle rather than perhaps go down the Gold Cup route, but you never know. I'm not sure Ken Boy really, or Cheltenham really suits Ken Boy. I see William Mullins have got him in the Stayers hurdle as well, so if they were going to Cheltenham, they might go down that route, but Leopardstown very much suits him, and those small fields do as well. But he was very good Sunday.
What would you do with Mellon?
Right there, riding more aggressively like they did last year in their Marsh chase. I don't think he really got suited by being held up.
No.
Obviously, they had to try and hold him up because he didn't stay, or he got there too soon last time. But it just didn't suit. 3 miles and holding him up doesn't suit him. They need to go aggressive with him over a shorter distance.
Okay, that's brilliant, Andy. One performance over the weekend that you were really struck by?
It's obvious, but I'd have to say Monkfish. He's just got everything that you'd love about National Hunt racing. Attacked his fences and just makes the game look very, very easy. And he's a joy to behold. And I think we need horses like him to carry the torch forward into next year's season and beyond.
Fabulous. Good work, Andy. Thanks very much for your time. And perhaps we could meet up, sometime next week and dissect the Newbury card over the weekend, because that's the next big sort of raft of Cheltenham clues that we're going to see. Yeah,
sounds like a plan. Look forward to doing that, and we'll do that one and perhaps the Kempton meeting before Cheltenham.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us here on AH Speed Figures, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel to pick up all these videos leading into Cheltenham. Thanks for your time.